Blood on the Tracks. So, Blood on the Tracks, or Chi no Wadachi, is a psychological manga by Shuzo Oshimi, the same guy who did The Flowers of Evil. It ran from 2017 to 2023 in Big Comic Superior and ended up being 17 volumes. The story follows Seiichi Osabe, a shy, soft-spoken middle school kid living a pretty ordinary life. The most noticeable thing about his life is his relationship with his mother, Seiko. She's extremely overprotective, but Seiichi doesn't see it as a problem. In fact, he feels safe with her. Her attention feels comforting. Other people might think she's a bit much, but to him, her devotion feels normal. That illusion completely breaks during a family hiking trip with his parents and his father's relatives. While they're walking near a cliff, Seiichi's cousin Shigeru jokingly shoves him toward the edge. It's careless, but not malicious. Seiko panics instantly and yanks Seiichi away. The rest of the family laughs it off, saying she overreacted, treating it like an embarrassing moment. Later, Seiichi and Shigeru wander off to a higher, more dangerous part of the cliff. While Shigeru is standing close to the edge, Seiko appears behind them. Without shouting or any hesitation, she walks up to her nephew and pushes him off the cliff. Afterward, she turns to Seiichi and gives him this calm, gentle smile, like she's done nothing wrong. Shigeru survives, but he's left in a coma, and Seiichi becomes the only person who knows what really happened. From that moment on, the entire manga is about what that knowledge does to him. Seiichi doesn't tell anyone. He doesn't even fully process it. Instead, he starts living under the weight of his mother's love, realizing it isn't just protective, it's possessive, and very controlling and dangerous. Seiko begins isolating him emotionally, manipulating his memories, his guilt, his fear, and even his sense of reality. She frames everything as being for his sake. The horror of this manga is watching Seiichi grow up while being psychologically trapped by the one person who's supposed to protect him. It's a story about how love, when twisted, can become something far more terrifying than hatred. Homunculus. So Homunculus is about this guy, Susumu Nakoshi. He's 34, technically homeless, but not in the usual way. He lives inside his car, parked between a park full of homeless people and a rich hotel he used to stay at. That placement matters a lot. He's basically stuck between social classes, not belonging to either. He used to be an actuary at a life insurance company, smart job, good money, but he quit and just checked out of life. Then there's Manabu Ito, a rich, weird 22-year-old medical student who's obsessed with studying humans. He's into psychology, medicine, occult stuff, everything. He targets Nakoshi and offers him 700,000 yen to undergo trepanation, drilling a hole in his skull to supposedly activate a sixth sense. Nakoshi refuses at first, but when his car gets towed, he gives in. Ito performs the surgery in a private apartment lab owned by his hospital director father. At first, nothing happens. Then Nakoshi discovers that when he closes his right eye, people around him appear as grotesque, distorted beings called homunculi. When both eyes are open, everyone looks normal. These homunculi aren't random monsters. They represent a person's inner trauma, guilt, repression, or self-image. The first major case is a Yakuza, who appears as a robot with a child's pinky finger. Nakoshi realizes the Yakuza is haunted by childhood guilt involving his friend losing a finger. As Nakoshi forces him to confront that guilt, the homunculus breaks down and the man abandons his criminal life. After that, the Yakuza looks normal even with Nakoshi's eye closed. Ito explains that homunculi reflect the subconscious, but also warns that Nakoshi's own mind influences what he sees. Sure enough, Nakoshi notices parts of his own body starting to resemble the homunculi he encounters. Next is Yukari, a young underwear model who appears as a shifting sand creature made of symbols and words. She has no solid identity and self-harms by cutting her leg. Ito manipulates her for his own curiosity, and Nakoshi becomes deeply entangled in her trauma. Their relationship turns sexual and disturbing, and Nakoshi breaks her homunculus by exploiting her weakness. But afterward, his own body starts transforming, showing that he's absorbing the damage instead of healing it. Eventually, Ito abandons the experiment, claiming homunculi are just delusions. Nakoshi demands the hole in his head be fixed, but instead he has his right eye sewn shut and focuses entirely on understanding Ito's homunculus. From there, the manga turns inward. Nakoshi's past, his class resentment, narcissism, and fear of being ordinary resurface. The homunculi stop being about other people and start reflecting him. Goodnight Punpun by Inio Asano. At its core, this is a coming-of-age story, but it's not the inspiring kind. It follows Onodera Punpun from elementary school into his early 20s, tracking his family life, friendships, love, ambitions, and most importantly, the way his mind slowly turns against him. Punpun and his family are normal humans in the story, but they're drawn as these crude, bird-like figures. Everyone else looks realistic. And that difference matters. It immediately separates Punpun from the world around him, like he's never fully synced up with reality in the first place. The story moves through different stages of his life: childhood, middle school, high school, and adulthood. And what's unsettling is that even during the earliest, most innocent phase, things are already wrong. As a kid, Punpun is exposed to stuff way too early. He learns about X and corn. The manga doesn't show this for shock value, but that's just how life works. Kids stumble into things before they're ready. At home, his dad is neglectful, his mom is emotionally abusive, and eventually their relationship collapses after an incident of domestic violence. Punpun doesn't fully understand what's happening, but he absorbs it all anyway. He wants to grow up and live a good life. But even those dreams start rotting once he realizes he isn't special, isn't particularly talented, and probably isn't going anywhere impressive. That realization hits him way earlier than it should. During this period, Punpun falls in love with Aiko. She's his first crush, but she also becomes something more than that. She turns into a symbol. She represents the time in his life when things felt stable, when the future still felt open. Loving Aiko becomes less about her as a person and more about clinging to the idea of who Punpun used to be. As Punpun moves into middle school and high school, his mental state starts collapsing. His inner monologue grows cruel. He becomes bitter, resentful, and deeply insecure, especially his growing sexual urges, which he doesn't know how to process. This period includes some of the darkest moments in the story. Punpun is raped by his aunt Midori. It's quiet, uncomfortable, and devastating. Later, Punpun nearly commits sexual assault himself against a woman he likes, and this is where the manga draws a hard line. Punpun is not a good person. He hurts people. He acts out of spite and self-hatred, and the story does not excuse him. His trauma explains his behavior, but it does not justify it. Punpun is fully aware of the kind of person he's becoming, and that awareness only feeds his self-loathing further. Despite this, he's still deeply pitiable. Truly bad things happen to him, and even his most mundane anxieties feel painfully relatable. After graduating high school, there's a brief stretch where Punpun is at his most sympathetic. He moves out, becomes independent, and immediately realizes he has no idea what to do next. He works a dead-end job and sets one massive, unrealistic goal for himself: meeting Aiko again. He builds his entire future around this idea without knowing if she even wants to see him. This is when Sachi enters his life. She's an artist with actual ambition. She pulls Punpun into her world and encourages him to help write a manga she's working on. For a moment, it feels like he might finally be useful, but Sachi isn't there to save him. She's blunt. She calls out his flaws. And when an editor finds Punpun's writing inadequate, she chooses her career over him. And that choice makes her feel painfully real. She cares about Punpun, but she's not willing to destroy her future to fix him. The manga also spends a lot of time on side characters, showing different ways people deal with life. There's Seki and Shimizu, two of Punpun's childhood friends. Seki drops out of school, works odd jobs, and develops a bleak but grounded outlook on life. Shimizu, on the other hand, believes he can see God, a strange figure with poop for a head. Unlike Punpun's God, Shimizu's feels ambiguous. It might be a delusion, or it might be something real. Seki takes responsibility for protecting him, but everything falls apart when Shimizu joins the Pegasus cult. Seki eventually rescues him from a potentially fatal incident, in what might be the only genuinely heroic moment in the series. Visually, Goodnight Punpun is incredibly grounded. The environments are hyper-realistic. There are constant interstitial panels of crowds, streets, and landscapes, reminding you that no matter how bad Punpun feels, the world keeps moving without him. Punpun himself becomes more surreal as the story goes on. His form changes to reflect his mental state. At one point, he becomes a pyramid. Later, when he reaches his lowest point, he turns into a humanoid figure with a pure black demon head. Sometimes God's face stares out from inside him. Punpun's God starts as a childish prayer and manifests as a grinning, photorealistic man with an afro. He mocks Punpun, pushes his worst thoughts, and becomes a scapegoat for his intrusive urges. Over time, it becomes clear that God isn't real. It's Punpun's inner voice, externalized so he doesn't have to take responsibility for it. Berserk. So, Berserk is one of those stories where even explaining it feels heavy, because basically every major character is traumatized, and the world in this story is cruel by default. And it all starts with Guts. Guts is born on a battlefield. His mother is a corpse hanging among dead soldiers after a battle. Guts is found beneath his mother's body, covered in blood and crying. A mercenary woman named Shisu finds him and decides to raise him. Shisu raises him as her son, alongside her partner, Gambino. Shisu names him Guts, partly as a joke, partly because he survived something no baby should. For a short while, this is as close to happiness as Guts ever gets. Guts grows up in a mercenary camp without any childhood friends or safety. From the time he can walk, he's surrounded by violence. He learns to swing a sword basically before he understands what killing actually means. Gambino trains him. At first it's rough, but Guts looks up to Gambino more than anyone. He wants to be strong, he wants approval. But then, things start going wrong. Shisu contracts the plague and dies painfully. Gambino watches his wife rot away, and when she dies, something in him breaks. From that point on, Gambino becomes unstable. He drinks constantly. He lashes out at Guts verbally and physically. He starts blaming Guts for Shisu's death, saying things like, "If you were never born, she'd still be alive." And then comes one of the darkest moments in the entire series. One night, while Gambino is drunk and desperate for money, he allows another mercenary to grape Guts in exchange for a few coins. Guts doesn't fully understand what's happening, he just knows it hurts and it's wrong. For him, it's terrifying. And the worst part is that afterward, Gambino doesn't protect him. He doesn't even acknowledge it properly. This moment permanently shapes Guts, his discomfort with touch, his rage, his fear of intimacy, and his inability to trust. Later, Gambino himself becomes completely unhinged. During a drunken breakdown, he attacks Guts, blaming him for everything before dying accidentally. So by the time Guts leaves the camp, he's already an orphan and is constantly abused. He's trained to kill and emotionally broken, and he's still a kid. After Gambino's death, Guts wanders alone, selling his sword to survive. He grows into this massive scarred teenager wielding a sword that's honestly too big for a normal human. And then he meets Griffith. Griffith is really attractive. He has white hair, delicate features, and an aura that immediately commands attention. He's the leader of a mercenary group called the Band of the Hawk. Griffith defeats Guts in a duel and forces him to join the band. And this is where Berserk changes tone for a while. It almost feels like a war epic instead of a horror story. Guts finally has comrades and a place to belong, and also people who fight alongside him instead of using him. Griffith is charismatic and terrifyingly driven. He has a dream to have his own kingdom. And here's where things get complicated emotionally. Griffith believes that a man without a dream is nothing. He believes that true friends must have their own dreams. Otherwise, they're just followers. Guts overhears Griffith saying this one night, and it destroys him. Because Guts realizes he doesn't have a dream. His entire life has been survival and obedience. So Guts leaves. This decision is one of the most important moments in Berserk, because Guts leaving is what eventually breaks Griffith. Before moving on, we need to talk about Casca. Casca is the only female commander in the Band of the Hawk. She's tough and disciplined and deeply loyal to Griffith. Casca was born poor, almost sold off as a sex slave by her family. Griffith saves her, gives her a sword, and gives her purpose. She becomes devoted to him. Not just as a leader, but both emotionally and romantically. But Griffith never reciprocates in a healthy way. He cares about Casca, but his dream always comes first. When Guts leaves, Casca is furious at him. But over time, when Guts returns later, they bond deeply. Their relationship grows into something real, which makes what happens later even worse. After Guts leaves, Griffith is heartbroken. He sneaks into the castle and sleeps with Princess Charlotte, the king's daughter, out of desperation and wounded pride. But he gets caught and thrown into the dungeon, and tortured for a year. His tendons are ruined. His tongue is damaged. Basically, his body is totally destroyed. His dream is effectively over. Meanwhile, the Band of the Hawk is declared traitors and hunted down. Casca keeps them alive as fugitives, barely surviving. Guts eventually returns, saves them, and rescues Griffith from prison. But here's the thing. Griffith is already broken beyond repair. Griffith possesses a strange object called a behelit, an egg-shaped artifact that cries blood. When Griffith realizes he can never achieve his dream as a human, he reaches absolute despair. And that's when the eclipse happens. The sky turns red, reality collapses, and then the God Hand appear. They offer Griffith a choice: sacrifice the Band of the Hawk, and be reborn as a demon king. Griffith accepts. Every single member of the Band of the Hawk is slaughtered and eaten by apostles. Griffith is now reborn as Femto. He rapes Casca directly in front of Guts. Guts loses an eye and an arm trying to stop it. Guts and Casca survives but are branded with the brand of sacrifice, which attracts monsters constantly. Casca's mind is completely shattered after the eclipse. She regresses to a childlike state, unable to process what happened. Guts for years becomes a walking embodiment of rage. He hunts apostles relentlessly, wielding a giant sword called Dragon Slayer. The more Guts embraces rage, the more he loses himself. Guts meets characters like Puck, Farnese, Serpico, Isidro, and later Shirka. Guts chooses to protect Casca instead of chasing revenge. Shirke helps Guts control the Berserker armor, which amplifies his strength at the cost of destroying his body and sanity. Griffith is reborn into the physical world through a twisted incarnation ceremony. He becomes a messianic figure, forming Falconia, a new empire. People worship him. The world sees Griffith as a savior, while Guts knows he's a monster. Eventually, Guts brings Casca to Elfhelm, where her mind is restored. Casca regains her memories, and cannot bear to look at Guts, because he reminds her of the eclipse. Devilman by Go Nagai. So the story follows Akira Fudo, a shy, gentle high school kid who's basically the opposite of a fighter. He lives with his friend Miki Makimura and her family while his parents work abroad. One day, Akira's childhood friend Ryo Asuka drops a bomb on him. He tells Akira that demons are real, that they ruled the earth long before humans, and that they're waking up again to reclaim it. Ryo says the only way to fight demons is to become one, so he drags Akira to this insane ritual called the Black Sabbath, where humans and demons merge in total chaos. During the ritual, Akira fuses with Amon, one of the most feared demon warriors. But instead of Amon taking over, Akira's human heart wins out. He keeps his consciousness, gains demonic power, and becomes Devilman, a demon who still cares about humans. After escaping the Black Sabbath, Akira secretly fights demons hiding within human society. At first, it feels like a straight monster hunting story, but it quickly gets uncomfortable. So Akira starts running into demons that mess with his head in different ways. There's Serene and Kim, and the thing is, they actually love each other. They're not pretending, it's real. And watching that makes Akira realize this isn't just good humans versus evil demons, like he thought. Then there's Jinman, this horrifying turtle demon with the faces of the people he's killed still alive on his shell, screaming and begging. Jinman even uses those voices to torture Akira while they fight. Akira kills him to stop it, but it completely wrecks him emotionally, and you can tell every fight like this is taking something out of him. Eventually, a massive demon invasion led by Lord Zenin hits Tokyo, revealing demons to the entire world. Akira learns that other humans have also become Devilmen, and he tries to unite them to protect what's left of humanity. Meanwhile, Ryo returns to the mansion where everything began and finds records saying he actually died years ago. He spirals, and that's when Psycho Jenny, a demoness, reveals the truth. Ryo is actually Satan, a fallen angel who rebelled against God to protect demons from extinction. Bio Booster Armor Guyver by Yoshiki Takaya. So the story starts with this secret organization called Kronos Corporation. They're basically running the world from the shadows, experimenting with biotechnology and turning humans into monsters called zoonoids. At some point, one of their test subjects escapes. This guy steals 3 Guyver units, which are these alien techno-organic devices, and tries to flee into the woods. Kronos soldiers chase him down, and when they corner him, he blows himself up with a bomb. The explosion scatters the 3 Guyver units. One of those units, known as Guyver Unit 1, lands near 2 high school students, Sho Fukumachi and Tetsuro Sagawa. Sho accidentally activates it, and that's where everything goes wrong for him. The unit attached to him and painfully bonds with his body, wrapping him in this living armor and turning him into Guyver 1. From that point on, Sho's life is basically over as a normal human. The Guyver armor is insanely powerful. It massively boosts strength, speed, durability, and gives Sho built-in weapons like high-frequency blades, energy cannons, and defensive fields. The armor can even regenerate him if he's injured or killed, as long as its control metal remains intact. That's the core of the Guyver. If the control metal is destroyed, the unit goes berserk and literally consumes the host. Once Sho learns this, he starts realizing that the Guyver isn't just a suit he can take off. It owns him. Meanwhile, Kronos retrieves the second Guyver unit, which merges with Oswald A. Lisker, creating another Guyver who becomes both an enemy and a rival. Ichi the Killer by Hideo Yamamoto. So Ichi the Killer is not a normal crime manga. It's about broken people gravitating toward violence because it's the only thing that makes them feel alive. The story follows Ichi, a deeply traumatized young man who's manipulated into becoming a killer. He's pathetic, unstable, and overwhelmed by guilt and shame. Whenever he breaks down emotionally, he snaps into extreme violence, convinced that he deserves pain as much as the people he hurts. Running parallel to him is Kakihara, a sadistic Yakuza enforcer searching for his missing boss. Kakihara enjoys suffering, both his own and others. Kakihara becomes obsessed with finding someone who can truly hurt him. When his path starts to overlap with Ichi's, the story turns into a collision between 2 different kinds of emptiness. The manga constantly asks whether violence is something people are forced into or something they secretly crave. The Drifting Classroom by Kazuo Umezo. The drifting classroom starts simple and immediately becomes terrifying. An elementary school suddenly disappears and reappears in a barren, post-apocalyptic wasteland. No food, no way home. The story centers on Sho Takamatsu and his classmates as they struggle to survive. At first, they try to stay calm and organized, but fear takes over quickly. Dehydration and paranoia begin to break them down. Kids turn on each other. Outside the wasteland, Sho's mother desperately searches for answers, slowly realizing that the disaster may be connected to her own dark thoughts and regrets. The horror mostly comes from the desperation and the slow loss of innocence. Alright, so that's it for the video. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video.